Welcome to the Scrappy Entrepreneur Podcast, the show that brings you practical, informative tips from the trenches to help you thrive and prosper as an entrepreneur. Whether you're just beginning your journey or working to grow your existing business, this show is for you. And now, your host, the original Scrappy Entrepreneur, Paula Y.
All right, well, welcome back to the Scrappy Entrepreneur Show. It's been more than 2 months since the coronavirus was declared a global pandemic. And during this time, as the world ground to a halt and schools closed, businesses were forced to close and stay-at-home orders were enacted, we all started to feel stress and fear and frustration as we worried about our businesses. And I have asked Kelley Jones to come to the show today because I really think that he is an inspiration on how he is handling his business affairs during this time. Just a little bit of background on Kelley. Kelley is the founder of Hospitality Alliance with offices in New York, Las Vegas, and Dallas. He's managed the operation teams of 8 of the top 100 highest grossing restaurants in the United States. He's a serial entrepreneur owning various ventures, companies, and restaurants. And today we're going to dive into really finding purpose and hope during coronavirus for our companies. So Kelley, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit of background about yourself.
Oh boy. From birth? No, kidding.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey, and after I left New Jersey, after high school, because I was a really bad student, so I graduated 258 out of 262 in my high school class, 2 numbers I'll never forget. And instead of going to college or even taking SATs, because I didn't have the money or the bandwidth, me and a friend ended up traveling around behind this little band called the Grateful Dead for 2 years.
What?
Yeah, so I saw 134 Dead shows before Jerry Garcia died, and I always worked in the restaurant business. Started at 14 years old, washing dishes and bussing tables.
At 14, wow.
Yeah, so my whole high school career, all 4 years, I worked through this Greek diner in New Jersey. And then we were traveling. As we'd run out of money, we'd stop and work at restaurants because the restaurants are always hiring and you could eat for free. And trust me, when you live in a van, eating for free is a really good perk. So that, turned into, a restaurant career. I started as a line cook, and then I was a sous chef and executive chef, and then a general manager, and then a multi-unit operator. And 12 years ago, in 2008, I went out on my own for the first time.
12 years ago?
It was 12 years ago in the last crisis, and that was the stock market plunging and the financial crisis. And so in 2008, I was better than anybody that I know at working for free. I was so good at it. I'd take project after project and never get paid for it. And then I realized the power of no and the power of retainers before I start work. And so that's grown over the years. I've had great successes. I've had some dismal failures. But it's kind of like 9/11. You never forget where you are.
Right.
On 16th of March, I closed down more than half of the properties, or I was forced to close down more than half of the properties. I was able to keep 3 open to do takeout and delivery only. And the only reason I kept those open is because I needed to pay my managers or I was going to lose them.
How many properties were there?
There was 15.
So you have 15 properties across the nation.
Yeah, so 8 states, but it's a combination of food halls, restaurants, and hotel food and beverage operations. So 8 states. And so on the 17th of March, a call came out from Central Church that they were starting to man PopUp food pantries on the 18th of March. So on the 18th of March, now we've just completed 10 weeks that we've been out there 4 to 5 days a week handing out food to people in need. So I laugh because it's like I'm still, serving food. I'm just doing it for free now.
So let me get this straight. So you're running various restaurants across the United States. You're running big food halls, really restaurants and major entertainment facilities like I think AT&T World Headquarters in Dallas.
Yep, we're at AT&T World Headquarters. In fact, we opened a barbecue restaurant and beer garden 3 weeks before we were forced to shut down.
Wow.
We're reopened. That was the first one to be able to reopen. We also have a food hall there that was supposed to open April 1st. But, my business model is craft. How do you crowd as many people into a space as possible? Well, that's not going to be possible for a while. So we don't have an opening for the food hall. But Still staying busy. Now it's just, about 10% of my time is attending to my business, and about 90% of my time is attending to Hope for the City, which is the name of the charity that was founded to serve these pop-up food pantries. Just to give you perspective, which is what's really interestingly cool and scary at the same time about this. The largest food pantry in Southern Nevada did 800,000 pounds of food last year. In our first 9 weeks, we gave out more than 3.4 million pounds of food.
Wow.
Yeah, so the need is very real out there. And it's first couple of weeks were a little, heartbreaking. It's still heartbreaking. The lines are long, sometimes up to 4 miles long for the cars that, come through these lines. And, we're putting boxes of food in their trunks. And, each car represents a family. And we're coming up close to 100,000 families at this point, that we will fed, and we know the need is going to be there for a long time to come. So, we're out fundraising and, working with various organizations to procure food, to procure money for Hope for the City. And what's really cool about Hope for the City, and, I'm involved in a couple of other charities, I can say this is the first charity where 100% of the donation goes straight to getting food. There's no overhead. Everybody's volunteer. There's no admin fees or costs. So 100% of all the money raised goes to feeding the city.
That's awesome. So back in March, you're running these big companies and you get the call that you have to close everything down. How did that feel?
Brutal. How else do you say it?
How many employees did you have?
Close to 300 that we had to furlough between all the various businesses. And that was the hardest part because, I've always taken it very seriously that my businesses are, supporting people's livelihoods, whether it's, their car payment, their kids' meals, their, rents or mortgages. And, my family's going to be fine coming out on the other end of this. But, when I was a line cook, I had 2, sometimes 3 jobs to support myself.
Right.
And, now these various cooks and servers and bartenders, that, we've laid off, my heart aches for them. So, we did provide some services, in all the properties that we kept open. We were allowing all of our staff to come in and eat for free. So at least they had food as well.
Oh, that's nice.
In the ones that, we couldn't open, like in California, they're locked down for probably a long period of time.
Right.
But it's cool because, you're starting to see things reopen. We're, starting to get in touch with our staff. We opened our Burlington, Vermont ramen shop, open up, to outdoor seating. Yesterday we were allowed to bring them and hopefully indoor, over the next week or two. Same thing with Colorado. We're expecting, the governor's got a press conference on Monday to announce, openings. And, so we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we'll be able to open the majority of them, but, some of them aren't going to make this. We've already bankrupted one company that had 2 properties just because we knew the debt was too big and we couldn't get out of it to be able to reopen those shops.
Right. Is this the hardest time in your business that you ever remember? Do you think 2008 was harder?
Well, 2008 was harder only because I had no income. My income has been reduced by over 95%.
95%
right now.
Yeah.
It's hard to say because when you're going through something, it's sad for me to see some of my employees, in their young 20s. This is the first thing they've ever gone through. The financial crisis. They were in school still. Whether it's grade school or high school. They weren't born during 9/11. So some of the major world events. Catastrophes that have happened, they weren't alive for. So watching, their reaction to it, not fun.
Right. And I think that, I opened it up saying that you have run 8 of the top 100 highest grossing restaurants in the United States. And obviously running a business efficiently and effectively. What's behind that? Like, what's the secret to running an efficient, effective restaurant?
Well, first of all, anybody that
secret?
Anybody that I know that wants to get in the restaurant business, sit with me. Let me try to talk you out of it because it's the only business where there's twice as many ways to lose money as make money, and the margins are really thin. And this is why the restaurant industry just met with the president last week. We're a very special industry. The PPP doesn't help us because you've got to pay it within 8 weeks, and we're not allowed to open. So we can't bring our entire staff back. Running a restaurant is really about we're in hospitality by definition, warm, personal, engaging. So that's the biggest point. important thing is, I love Maya Angelou's quote, as I've learned what people say, you forget what people say, forget what people do, but you never forget how somebody makes you feel. And so that's really what the restaurant business is all about. It's about a feel. They're all live, vibrant entities. Most neighborhood restaurants, are there. They're the fabric of the neighborhood. But, you've got to pay attention to it and run it like a business as well.
Right.
Because the margins are so thin. So now even being able to open up with 50% capacity, that doesn't help us because, we're still going to end up, having to pay the bills, the rents, the utilities, all the fixed costs of running a business with, half the sales.
Is it possible? I mean, I've been looking at these restaurants with half the capacity. Like, can they make it?
The short answer is sure. You got enough money, you can make it for a long time. But at some point, you lose a penny a day, you're going to go out of business at some point. That's where we're waiting for the government to, be able to step in and assist us. I've got PPPs for almost every one of my properties, but I haven't touched a dime of it.
Right. Do you expect costs to rise, meaning prices for customers to rise because of that?
Somehow I think yes. The shorter answer is because right now, the commodities are more expensive. Meat is more expensive now because they're starting to run low because the meat processing plants have all been shut down.
Right.
So, the ripple effect is incredible. There's farms where tomatoes are literally dying on the vine right now, and they're just being mulched right into the soil because there's no distribution way. Truckers are, not wanting to, haul things to new states and areas that they're afraid of.
Right.
And, so farmers are affected. The whole, cattle industry is affected. The trucking industry is affected. All of these are the sources for, how we operate. So, of course, the restaurants are going to be affected. We're going to pay more money for things. So, normally, typically, yeah, the guest is going to be affected too because, somehow you've got to figure out how to make your margins. Like, listen, if I can just break even, I'd be okay,
right.
Because, it's more important to me that we were able to bring our teams back and, but we also have team members that, elected not to come back because they're not ready to go back out in public. So,
right.
And I think you and I have talked about it, I have to be sensitive to where people sit on the whole spectrum of social distancing. I'm out every day, feeding people and, I'm not going to let this thing affect me where I'm going to sit at home and, there are people that are hiding in their closets, not going to come out until there's a vaccine for this thing. And I get that. But that's just not going to keep me outside.
Do you have any advice for restaurant owners right now that are struggling at this time? What are you focusing on? I mean, you obviously went in and cut costs, laid off people.
Well, what are we focusing on? We're focusing on survival. I'm not being dramatic when I say that. After talking to many colleagues in the restaurant business in, many, many states that we operate in, 30 to 40% of the restaurants that are closed will not reopen.
Is that the number? I was going to ask you that. 30 to 40% will not open.
We think so. Unless, again, the government can come in and assist. One of the first calls I made at the end of March was to every one of my landlord to tell them I'm not going to be paying you rent in April. And
how were they with that?
Well, I shut down 2 properties that wouldn't work with me. And most of them are like, well, we'll defer it. I'm like, well, that's not going to work either because you defer it. Great. One landlord said, I'll defer it until June. And I'm like, okay, then in June, I'm going to have to pay 3 months of rent. That doesn't work for me either.
Right.
And I said to him, listen, what are you going to do if we close down? How many people are going to be clamoring to get into this space? And if they do want to get into this space, they're going to want 3 months, rent free while they're doing their build out. They're going to want a tenant improvement allowance from you. So you're going to have to write a check for them to be able to do the things they want to do. Why don't you just work with me for a couple months? So what I was able to do, and this is for restaurateurs out there, or any business really that's got to pay rent, that's a huge burden at this point with the sales drop. What we've been able to creatively do is tack however many months we're closed to the end of the lease. So in other words, if we're closed 4 months and we can't pay you rent for 4 months, we're going to add those 4 months to the end of the lease so that we start paying you rent, and then we have 4 extra months of being in the space.
Oh, that's good.
Negotiate. So that's one of the things that we've done.
That's awesome. Do a lot of restaurants right now, are they having trouble like ramping up, getting like as soon as our governor came back and said open, I was amazed at how many actually didn't open, but that's because they have to order food and get staffing, right? I mean, there's a ramp up.
There is a ramp up, especially being closed for 2 months. And, if you closed and didn't do takeout, luckily the restaurants that we kept open, the 4 that we kept open to do takeout and delivery, much easier to ramp up. We had 2 days notice in Dallas, we got open. We had 2 days notice here in Vegas, we got open. We had 2 days notice in Burlington, we opened up on Friday when we were able to open. But we were talking about it for weeks. And so we had a plan. As soon as, the gunshot happened, we were already at the starting line ready to race. So
you were ready.
Yeah, and we put everything in place. And, again, I talked to you earlier, every state's got a very, very, different guidelines by which to follow. Some states are making us take the customer's information and some states aren't. All of them are pretty consistent with gloves and masks. And, 2 states aren't requiring us to take temperatures, but we are taking temperatures of every employee before we allow them to clock in so that we know that we're keeping our guests safe, we're keeping our staff safe. You got to be prepared. You got to have a plan.
So I have a question for you. Is it true that you are a Food Network star?
I don't know about a star. I did shoot a show called Vegas Restaurant Rehab. It was interesting because, on the one hand, it was a lot of fun. They did pay me for it. And
how'd they find you?
I think on my YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
They sought me out. I signed on to do 2 seasons with them. And unfortunately, I was opening up the Mayfair Hotel in LA after we shot the pilot. And then it was, great, we need to, start filming season 1. And I was opening up a hotel. And it's like, I need a couple of months. I just can't start. Well, in those 2 months, the vice president of development for the Food Network was fired. So they shelved all new production.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. But it was fun. One of the things, it's reality TV. So, I was really hesitant to do it because, I don't want to be, edited to look what I'm not. But they were really great to work with as far as, allowing me to give direction because, they would try to feed me a line. I'm like, nope, I would never say that. I'm not going to say that. Or, I recommend that maybe we do it this way. And so they were really cool because I wanted to keep it true, to the restaurant business because with respect, a lot of those restaurant reality shows, there's no way that would happen in the real world.
Right.
So I needed credibility because, in the restaurant world and I do a lot of public speaking. I don't want people to, do the same thing. It's like that would never happen.
Right. So when I think back on what you told me earlier, that you didn't go to college, right? And that you built this huge, amazing business, a lot of businesses. Like, how did you build that? You have a huge enterprise with a lot of businesses. Was it just a lot of luck? Was it a lot of hard work?
Well, a lot of people would say to me, wow, how did you get here without going to college? And it's like, because I could outwork anybody. And the reality of it is I'm a kinesthetic learner. So I'm show do, and the whole restaurant business is all about show do. I would say, work ethic, I could work longer, faster, and harder than you can. That's, why. And, as I'm getting older, I try to do it a whole lot smarter. One of my other favorite quotes is success is a result of good judgment. Good judgment is a result of experience, and experience is often the result of bad judgment. So I've made a lot of mistakes in my career and, hopefully get better from that.
Right. What is your biggest success?
Oh, boy, that's hard. I'm proud that over my career, I've operated the teams at 8 of the top grossing restaurants in America. I think being resilient, going out on my own 12 years ago was, kind of scary. But, really rewarding. My first restaurant that I did on my own was in San Diego. And, I was pretty much living there 5 days a week, because I live in Las Vegas, but I'd be there. And, within 6 months, we got Best New Restaurant San Diego Magazine, Best New Restaurant 944 Magazine, Best New Restaurant Riviera Magazine. So that was kind of cool because it was mine. It was my first project that I did on my own. And, I lived it and breathed it. So, prior to going out on my own, I was, a vice president or president of large restaurant companies. So I had multiple layers of people underneath me. And so this is kind of cool because I'm like back living in a single property again and just, really trying to influence that. So that was kind of cool that, we got those kind of accolades.
Yeah. How do you build the best restaurant? Does it have to do with decor, food, and experience?
Well,
How do you get those awards?
There's, in my opinion, there's three major pillars in the restaurant or hospitality business. So, the first one is the energy of the room. So that's the lighting, the music, the furniture, all the energy. The second would be the product. What is your menu like? Even if it's a hamburger, is it the best hamburger you can make using the best ingredients? But the last piece is the hospitality piece. Warm, personal, engaging service, where people want to come back. It's not, hey, let's go back to, Gaku Ramen. It's let's go back and see Carrie at Gaku Ramen. So the people become the place. And, I wouldn't have admitted this when I was a chef, but I'm convinced of it today. I can forgive an overcooked steak. I can't forgive rude or inattentive treatment.
Right. So you focus a lot on training the people around, as well as really instilling in them customer service then.
Yeah. So, training, listen, the more you expect from somebody, the more you have to train them, and an answer I hate my staff to be able to ever say to me is, I don't know, because I don't know is a product of A, I didn't train them well enough, or B, they don't care enough. And actually in 2014, I launched a training and development company. And so I've been blessed to work with Madison Square Garden Company. For 4 years, I trained all of their teams at Madison Square Garden, Radio City Music Hall, Beacon Theater, Chicago Theater. I opened the LA Forum for them back in 2014 and trained all 900 team members. And people are like, oh, so you trained the food and beverage team? It's like, no, I trained everybody, security, concessions, ushers, production, food and beverage, merchandise, and it's guest touch point training. So, my feeling is if you come into contact with the public on any level, you're in hospitality.
Right. And then, so how long is the training? Like, how long does it take to train that? Is it a week, a day?
So with, when we opened the LA Forum, it was, I think we did 3 2-hour sessions a day for 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. So I read about you when I was doing some research that you are really, you stay competitive by being a student of the craft.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about that and how it's helped your career.
So I'm passionate about my industry, and whether it's, I always call it market research when I go out and eat and drink, everywhere. So every time I travel, and up until February 27th, I traveled all the time. I did 23,000 miles in the air in January and February. I haven't been on a plane since February 27th. But,
oh my gosh.
Every time I go into a new market, I'm checking out what's new and hot in the market. I read voraciously just about every trade publication that's out there, whether it's hotel business, restaurant business, food and wine, whatever it might be. I probably get about 14 or 15 magazines a month come to my office, and I just read through them to see what's cool, what's hot, what's the next big thing. But mostly it's going out and seeing what other people are doing, and either directly ripping them off or modifying it and to do it, because there's no such thing as copywriting in this business.
Right. Okay, so as an entrepreneur and someone in hospitality, I'm going to bring up these 3 subjects and tell me what comes to your mind.
Sure.
Running your company. Branding and sales and marketing.
Massively important. Branding, of course, and everything's got to be true to the brand. And, certainly as it pertains to the restaurant, I see so many restaurants that are so disjointed, where their food program doesn't speak at all to their beverage program. So, there's got to be a ribbon of continuity. Once you decide what your concept is, I always say, what is your elevator pitch? Like in 1 or 2 sentences, tell me what this restaurant is. Sweet and tender is a softer, more sophisticated approach to a steakhouse using seasonal ingredients. Boom.
Boom.
And so then everything that you do has got to be on that, that elevator pitch, the decor, the lighting, the music even. It's so amazing to me when I go into a restaurant and it's an Asian restaurant playing reggae music. It's like, wait, how does that work?
Right.
And so I see that a lot. So, once you establish what your brand is and all the brand points, it's so important. And then one of the things that happened in 2008, which blew my mind in my industry, is, the economy crashes. First thing that goes, PR and marketing. Right. Not my property.
Really?
That's when I ramped PR and marketing up, because you got to drive top line.
Right.
There's 2 ways to make money in my business: either grow sales or cut costs, and nobody's gotten rich by cutting costs.
Right.
But that's the first mindset that most people in the restaurant industry went to. It's like, how do I cut costs? Cut costs. I'm like, how do I drive business? Drive more business, because it's twice as hard to manage a slow restaurant as a busy restaurant.
Right. Do you attribute a certain percentage of your P&L to branding, sales, and marketing?
3% at least.
3%.
3% of sales goes to marketing.
I'm just amazed at the restaurants that open up that don't do any marketing. They'll spend $100,000 on TIs, but then don't market.
They don't understand marketing. That's why.
Yeah.
I'm not a marketer, but I know the importance of marketing. I'm not a designer, but I hire an interior designer for every restaurant. Like, I love design, but that's not what I do. So,
right.
I hire somebody that's good at what they do. And that's another thing I've learned over the years is hire people better than you and let them do the job for you.
Right. Okay. Next up, culture. Culture at the company level or the restaurant level.
You can't be successful without it. That's what I do. I do culture training. Because the culture is, the culture is that commonality of what the team thinks and how they operate. Like core values. That is the thing that drives your behavior. And you can't. The culture is everything. It's from, how you identify your team members, how you hire your team members, how you train your team members, and then doing the right thing, no matter what, whether you're there or not. People all the time ask me, how do you operate all these restaurants, from afar? We're in 8 states. And I'm like, the culture, we onboard people and we know pretty quickly if they're going to make it. Our training programs, for our front of the house team is anywhere from 5 to 9 days, depending on your position. And we know pretty quickly if somebody's going to make it through that training. And if they don't, we cut our losses because we don't want to pay somebody that's, probably not going to be a good fit in our team, in our culture.
Right. Okay. And then last would be capital and funding.
Well, you can't do anything without it.
So when you opened up your first restaurant, was it scary to take out, did you do it by loans or?
No, had investor
awesome.
that actually owned the hotel. That brought us in. And so, there was a management agreement. We came in and we concepted it. But, capital's, important. As I said earlier, you make a penny a day, you can stay in business forever. You lose a penny a day, at some point you go out of business. And, that's another mistake, my colleagues make when they open a restaurant is, you better have $50,000 or $100,000 or whatever in the bank when you open, because no restaurant is profitable in their first couple of months.
Really? It takes a couple of months?
Yep, because your comps are higher because you're inviting more people in to eat for free. Typically you have more staff, so your labor's higher until you know that the service is good and you can start scaling back. Typically a typical server in one of my restaurants will do, between 25 and 30 seats. That's their section. But when we open up, they probably have 12.
Wow, that's interesting. So back to today's issue and what we were going to talk about is now that everyone understands this great business that you built, and when the governor closed and you closed, you really made a decision. There was, like you said, a call from a local church that said that they were going to start doing pop-up food pantries. And did it just come across email? Did you get a call? How did you get involved?
We got an email. Central Christian is our church now. My wife's for 12 years, me for 10. When they said you do it, I think, to me, the first couple of days, it was just cathartic to get out there and do something to keep my mind off of the crazy world, this insanity of our new reality.
So tell me what that was like. So you get the email and then you go out, you show up at the food pantry. And so what are you doing?
We've gotten really efficient at it.
I know. I hear that you have now masterminded the whole food pantry. You've set up you're running it like a restaurant, right?
Well, it's a team. I'd love to take credit, but I won't, because it's a lot of people that work, sometimes daily at these things. And, it's become a family, so I'm like, oh, wow, it's Tuesday, Coronado. I get to see these people. Oh, Wednesday at Sunset Station, I get to see these people. So
you're doing it 5 days a week?
Definitely 4. Every once in a while I'll do at the church. They have the pantry on Saturdays and Sundays, so I'll do a Saturday. 2 weeks ago, I think I did a Saturday. But definitely 4 days a week. I've been out there at least 4 days a week for 10 weeks now, and starting Tuesday will be week number 11 until there's not a need. And that's what we're really gearing up for is, doing the long term. Las Vegas is not going to reopen, 100%. I'll be happy if Las Vegas opens 25%.
Yeah.
That's going to mean 75% of the people still aren't going to be coming back to work. So there's going to be a need. And, it's growing. The lines are growing longer and longer.
Yeah, the lines are sometimes over 2 hours long, right, for food?
Sometimes over 3 and 4 hours long.
3 and 4 hours.
And so typically when I, start the pantries I'm at and we start the cars, because, we're a green food pantry too. So we get there to an empty parking lot. The truck rolls in, we unload it. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3 and 4 trucks, depending on the location. So each truck has, about 10 pallets of food. And so, we unload it, we place it to where, we can either, if we have to bag or box things, and then, probably within an hour after the truck gets there, we start the lines. And I always ask, the first couple of cars, how long you've been waiting here. I mean, we started 8 in the morning, and, there's been times it's like I've been here since 1 in the morning or
1 in the morning.
3 in the morning. Yeah. And it's crazy. In fact,
sad.
there's one guy, and I always know who he is because he's got a truck with a rabbit, like a stuffed rabbit tied to the grill of the car. So, start talking to him, and literally he's been out there for 10 weeks. And, his name is Omar. Found out, asked him, and, really good guy, and he's there, typically about 3 days a week he's getting food, but he's getting it for his neighbors and some of the elderly that are shut in. So here's a guy that's waiting for 3 and 4 hours to pick up food for somebody else. And so you're seeing the best of humanity out there. And in fact, last week, we have our Hope for the City t-shirts on. And, as new volunteers come in every day, we're giving them t-shirts. Well, I gave a t-shirt to Omar. And he's like, thank you very much. And then I see him the next day at the next food pantry, and he's got the t-shirt on his dashboard. It was so cool. Like, so his dashboard said Hope for the City. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So how has this changed you?
Wow. Pretty profoundly. I mean, I've never been closer, I think, to, the church, certainly closer to, these individuals that are pretty selfless, that are going out there every day and they're volunteering. Like I said, it's 100% volunteer workforce. So, that's a really special commitment from people. And then, I'm working with the leadership of Hope for the City on fundraising. And
you're the new development director, I hear.
Yeah. That's Mike.
Is that your new title?
It's Director of Development. So
Director of Development.
Chief Development Officer. It keeps going up every time I talk to Mike. It started out as Vice President Development. I go, I don't care, and I haven't been a title guy.
Are you
going to
lead your company?
No, this isn't, but we do want to continue this. So, I think, we will continue this, maybe forever. This will be a charity. I founded a charity, or co-founded a charity called the Epicurean Charitable Foundation.
Oh, you founded that?
Yeah. So, we
such
started
a leader.
We started that in 2001, and it was a formidable group of, food and beverage executives, from up and down the strip that, it was first called Epicurean Club. And it was a group of us that just got together to eat and drink at each other's properties, and it was a fellowship of food and beverage people.
Wow.
And then about a year into it, we looked around the table and said, we have a pretty formidable group. We should do something and give back. And that's when the club became a foundation. And our mission is to raise money to send underprivileged Clark County High School students off to full-ride college scholarship. So we provide the scholarship. We also pair the students with board members and mentor them throughout their college career, and then end up giving them job placement. So my assistant now was one of my mentees who graduated 2 years ago. My assistant before her was one of my mentees that graduated, and who's now the executive director of housekeeping at the Venetian. So, we're providing the next generation of food and beverage and hospitality professionals. So it's kind of cool. And, I have great relationships with just about every one of the students that I've, been blessed to mentor. And, it's a two-way street, because they teach me as much as, I might be teaching them. It's
right.
Great.
Yeah. So when you're out at the food pantries, are you amazed at the type of, I guess, it seems like it's just everyday people. It's not what you would normally see in a food pantry, right? This is hurting everybody.
Yeah. I mean, and you don't know what people are going through. So, we see Teslas and BMWs and Mercedes, waiting online to come and get food. And, you don't know if they over leverage themselves and now all of a sudden they have no income. So, they've got to pay either their car payment or, their grocery bill. And, I heard of a food pantry last week that closed down, and the reason was because of all the nice cars in line. And I'm like, but if somebody's willing to wait an hour or two for food, there's
food,
a need,
right?
So give them food.
Agreed.
So, that's why, Hope for the City's a secular 501c3, we'll feed anybody. People are like, do I have to, do anything. I'm like, nope, just get in line and we're going to feed you. So anybody that's in need, go to hopeforthecity.tv. It'll tell you how you can volunteer. It'll tell you how you can donate money, and it'll tell you if you have a need, where to go to get food.
Mm-hmm. Do you think by, shifting your energy and your focus towards helping other people when you and your company were going through a lot of pain, did it help you deal with all of that, or?
Yeah, like I said, it was cathartic, but I mean, it's always better to give than to receive. And, is there stress around the companies, not being open and, losing income and all that? Of course there is. But, I know, listen, it's kind of like I've had great jobs and lost them. I get another great job. I've had restaurants that have been wildly successful and have, been great cash flows. I've had restaurants that I've had to shut down. In fact, I had 2 restaurants here in Las Vegas at Tivoli Village. One opened for 3 years, Poppy Den, and with celebrity chef Angelo Sosa. And then I had one with Bradley Ogden, who's largely credited with the whole farm to table movement, who was a James Beard Award winner for best restaurant in America when he had his restaurant at Caesar's Palace. Back in 2004, I think, but that restaurant was open 6 months, grand opening, grand closing.
What happened? How does the restaurant open 6 months? Just no customers?
It wasn't making any money. We didn't cash flow not 1 month the whole time we were open. After 6 months of us constantly writing checks to keep the doors open, I finally said, look, I'm not going to write another check. And my partner said, well, then we're going to dilute you. And I'm like, dilute me? Just sign me off. It's like, I'll walk away right now. I'm not putting any more money in. So we ended up shutting it down like 3 or 4 weeks later.
What do you think they did wrong?
Well, it was a challenging, because, Tivoli Village is, a lot of restaurants have come and gone in the same spaces there. So it's just a real challenged market up there. I don't think we did anything wrong. In fact, quite the opposite. It really made me second guess my ability to operate, because I've had great successes over the years. And it's like, I opened these 2 restaurants, both in 2014.
Both in Tivoli?
Yeah, both in Tivoli.
Do you think it's a bad location?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even Brio just announced they're not reopening.
I saw that. Wow.
And I think they were the only restaurant that really did business and made money. And there's a lot of restaurants that aren't going to reopen.
Right.
And it's sad.
Yeah. Well, any parting advice for our entrepreneurs listening today on running the business or really taking time to slow down and find hope and purpose during this time?
I'm not a guy that's sitting on a couch binge watching Netflix. It's just not what I can do. So I'm always going to do something that's got a purpose. I'd say, it's cathartic. Go out and donate money, donate time, come help us down at the food pantries. Like I said, hopeforthecity.tv, and go check out the website. If nothing else, check out the website and watch the videos, because it'll really show you the impact of what's going on in Las Vegas and around the country. We're not the only food pantry, that's for sure. But, as far as entrepreneurs go, sometimes you just got to do it. For years, people are like, you should go out on your own. You should go out on your own. But you know what? When you make, a pretty good paycheck working for somebody else, it's like, that's kind of hard thing to walk away from.
When you went out on your own, did you have a mortgage, a wife, and a child?
Oh, not a child, but a mortgage and a wife for sure. Right. And like I said, that first year, 2008, was brutal. But then I started to learn from my mistakes of working for free and not now I don't do anything without a retainer. You want me to do some work for you. You want me to do a pro forma. You want me to do a concept deck for you. I'm happy to. This is what's going to cost up front.
Right. That's so smart, because a lot of people don't believe in themselves and they give it away for free for so long, like you said. Yeah.
In 2009, I learned the power of no. I can't tell you how many projects I got from like, this is my proposal. And, people think I'm Monty Hall and it's let's make a deal. It's like, no, that's my proposal. This is my price. I'm not the most expensive. I'm not the cheapest. But if you want me, this is what it's going to cost. And, people are like, well, try to negotiate with me. I'm like, no.
That's amazing.
And then they'd hang up and call me a day later and go, okay, we're going to bring you on board.
So when you put out the proposal saying I'm not going to work until you pay me this retainer, did you find that a lot of people didn't, but then you were able to fill up your cup with the good people that would?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a very small industry. I mean, just like your industry, everybody that's in PR and marketing in town. I know everybody that's in hospitality in town, and even nationally, all the big restaurateurs and chefs. We all know each other because we speak at the same conferences, and we network with each other, especially if we go into a market we don't know and a friend is in that market, and so we'll find out, and do a deep dive with them. But there's a lot of development. Our economy was booming. I was getting incredible opportunities. We had a development, hotels in downtown LA, Tempe, Arizona, La Jolla, and Bellevue, Washington, that all basically shut down. So all of them were paying retainers because we were concepting all the food and beverage operations and designing and developing and doing the kitchen and bar designs and all that. And every one of them, within a 4-week period, it's like, yeah, we're not going to be paying you anymore.
Oh, no. Everything it was just pumping, and then it just grinded to a halt, didn't it?
Yep. So
it'll come back.
Yeah, it'll come back eventually. Like I said, I think we can weather the storm. I'm just concerned for people that can't, because, we talked earlier where, a doctor in California just said, enough with the craziness, because in my opinion, I think the cure right now is a little bit worse than the disease, and, suicide rates have gone up, and he's saying, suicide attempts are rivaling new coronavirus positive testing.
Yeah. Well, check out hopeforthecity.tv, and please, if you can, donate or give of your money. And thanks so much for coming in today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much for listening today. And if we brought you any value, please rate, subscribe, and share our podcast. Also, please make sure to connect with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I'm your host, Paula Y.